America's iconic Yellowstone National Park was closed for the first time in 34 years.
When we think of Yellowstone National Park, we think of Yogi Bear, we think of Old Faithful, but underneath that park, there is a ticking time bomb.
I recently saw something extremely clear. This is a crater like Yellowstone. It's not a weird site with hot water as we had assumed. Rather, it's a very hot volcano. This is a murderer from below Earth, a sleeping creature that will arouse. I want everyone to be aware of what we are observing. This isn't a discussion about a 100-foot crack in the supervolcano that underlies Yellowstone National Park. Scientists caution that there is a 320% increased chance of a rapid eruption in Yellowstone as a result of this significant shift. The result will be disastrous when this occurs. Now let's go into the specifics. Speedboating's enhanced risk in Norris Geyser Basin. Let's go over basic statistics before we get into the specifics. We will first go to the Norris Geyser Basin, a hot area with an environment that is said to have existed for an astounding 115,000 years, which is the oldest geothermal reservoir in Yellowstone. Just 1,000 feet above sea level, 459 degrees F is the highest temperature. However, there's more. This region, which is home to Steamboat Geyser, is a living example of Yellowstone's breathtaking scenery. The 120-meter-tall geysers' erratic outbursts, which can sporadically last anywhere from 4 days to 50 years, are an uncommon occurrence. But hold on. In March 2018, the game's regulations were modified. In 2018, the geyser surpassed its own record with an astounding 48 outbursts, breaking the previous record of 32 explosions. This raises the question, is this connected to the chance of a flash explosion rising by 320%? As it happens, the narrative is far larger than the behavior of the geyser. The basin's dance captivated scientists. Beginning in 1996 and continuing for 8 years, an 18-foot string rose nearly 5 inches, then decreased about 3 inches over that time. It then abruptly began to rise at a never-before-seen pace of about 6 inches annually. The scenario was stopped by an earthquake in the basin in March 2014, with a magnitude of 4.9. The ground has since alternated between rising and sinking until 2019, when it finally began to descend. However, the basin is still around 5 inches higher now than it was in 2000. So you want to know if the 320% rise may be attributed to anything else. The Mentor is an enormous volcano. Supervolcanoes are very destructive. There will be a supervolcanic explosion beneath Yellowstone National Park, unlike any other eruption in recorded history. The world's 20 megavolcanoes are the largest nightmare for human existence. Only 3 eruptions of the Yellowstone supervolcano have occurred in the previous 2.1 million years. The volcano explosive index is now at an 8 out of 8, but the 4th will arrive sooner than you may expect. Volcanologists estimate that the age of the most recent eruption is 640,000 years. This can result in an explosion that releases poisonous gases that harm crops and interfere with Midwest power supply. Because of the poisonous sunshine, the United States will experience extreme heat and cold for many years to come. The European Science Foundation predicts that this will be the biggest calamity since the beginning of human civilization. Worst of all, cracks started to show. A significant eruption in 2018 forced the closure of Wyoming's Grand Teton National Park. Due to safety concerns, Hidden Falls and Inspiration Point were closed while park workers assessed the risks. 1 person at the U.S. rock falls are a possibility, according to the Geological Survey. When the Yellowstone supervolcano at Grand Teton National Park last erupted, it left behind a 34 by 50-mile hole in the earth and 240 cubic miles of rock, ash, and cinders that were thrown into the sky. This eruption occurred hundreds of years ago. This is a 30-meter fracture that might explode into a supervolcano. A catastrophic event is one that endangers humankind. Such a megavolcano, an asteroid, nuclear conflict, or biological warfare. Volcanic eruptions may wipe out the entire planet, but are they receiving the attention they deserve? Not at all. A year without any aviation-related deaths is unlikely to occur, but it is also unlikely that 10% of the world's population will perish in a plane disaster. The Federal Trade Commission spends more than $7 billion a year on climate protection, although it takes longer for supervolcanoes to kill large numbers of people than it does to destroy aeroplanes. This is in contrast to the electricity program. Even though we have the ability to stop these tragedies, we chose to ignore them. We are placing ourselves in an unprecedented predicament if we act in this way. Perched just above Yellowstone National Park is a massive volcano. Please pay close attention to what follows. Yellowstone was declared a national park in 1872, but it wasn't until the 1960s that geologists discovered the volcano was still active. The explosion of Yellowstone may be thousands of times more massive than Mount St. Helens in 1980. The northern Rockies will be covered with many feet of ash. There will be volcanic ash everywhere in the United States. What is beneath the national park's geysers and hot springs is now a mystery to geologists. People are always inquiring as to if and when Yellowstone may erupt again, as well as the intensity of the eruption. Massive volcanoes are uncommon, dangerous natural disasters that have the power to affect both humanity and the environment. They are known as black swan events. This idea is not entirely ruled out, though. Large-scale supervolcanic eruptions present a challenge to scientists since they differ greatly from one another. The key to distinguishing them is that they contain complex chemistry, chaotic forces, and enigmatic geological characteristics that are concealed kilometers below the surface. Scientists have recently discovered the hidden architecture of Yellowstone. They created a model that showed how lava may ascend from the Earth's core and construct two sizable molten rock chambers that are partially below the park's surface. Between two magma chambers, there is unmolten rock, layered on top of one another. There is hardly much oil in the lava that emerges from the mantle and flows freely. It is created when the uppermost portion of this layer, which is located around 6 miles below the surface, interacts with the cold surface of the Earth to cool and solidify. Large volumes of oil are stored in the fractured and frozen magma that fills the upper magma chamber near the top of the bulge. This is like an unsealed, shaken can of soda. You get the idea. This new work, which was published in Geophysical Research Letters, describes how geochemical changes in the bilayer evolve over time. We will eventually get a model picture of the system's appearance when there are sufficient signals to cause a massive explosion. Their model is fascinating because it enables them to go back in time and ascertain the possible effects of the explosion that occurred millions of years ago. The most recent finding validates earlier studies on the two magma chambers that are seething under the park. At Yellowstone, geologists may also monitor the speed at which seismic waves from minor earthquakes pass through rocks using sensors. Researchers utilize the data to produce MRI-like pictures of two magma chambers, since these waves move more slowly in hot, partly molten rock. It is important to note that the term supervolcano does not exist. The volcano that formed the crater is called Yellowstone, or the caldera. These are the characteristics of the mountain. In essence, a caldera is a volcano that creates a sizable crater. You did indeed hear. In reality, the center region of the park appears oddly devoid of mountains. They seem to fly away or fall into the hole on the Yellowstone map that shows the actual caldera. About 2.1 million years ago was the first significant eruption in the Yellowstone area, while the most recent eruption happened 63,000 years ago. 3 down, 4 to go. This would be accurate when the danger reaches a 320% rise. And who can foresee with any degree of accuracy the amount of magma required to ignite an explosive fire? It is important to remember that the Yellowstone system is still active, even though the eruption is minor and results in several lava flows. The final one would occur 70,000 years ago at Yellowstone, during a cataclysmic occurrence. However, as you can see, volcanoes are not like machines, and we should all place a great deal of attention on each one of them. There are more calderas in the nation besides Yellowstone. One of the few calderas worth mentioning is Long Valley Caldera, which is situated close to the Mammoth Mountain Ski Resort in California. That's precisely what the U.S. Geological Survey discovered. It erupted around 700,000 years ago and is situated east of Yosemite National Park. Large explosions are therefore uncommon, but smaller explosions can still be lethal and destructive, and they even raise the possibility of flash explosions. Actually, California is home to 7 volcanoes, or subterranean lava fields. An earthquake on the San Andreas Fault in California with a magnitude of 6 or higher has effects similar to a volcanic eruption. It begs the question, what would happen if this giant volcano were real? First, a great deal of sulfur and ash were released into the air. Crop destruction and possible environmental changes might result from this. We are aware of this because the great eruption of Mount Tambora in 1815 resulted in severe weather, a collapse in agriculture, and a sharp drop in world temperatures. There are many fascinating things in the park around Yellowstone that might be fatal if you're not careful, since the lava boiling beneath the mountain is a strong heat source. Still, why do supervolcanoes erupt and die? First of all, you should be aware that supervolcanoes are defined as volcanoes that have erupted more than 1,000 cubic kilometers of soil and have reached a magnitude of 8, the maximum number on the volcanic explosive index. When lava from the mantle rises to the Earth's crust but is unable to travel via fissures or holes, supervolcanoes are created. The magma ball's pressure builds up steadily until it collides with the ground's rocks. This can happen in subduction zones like Toba or hotspots like Yellowstone crater. Large-scale ash and lava eruptions from major volcanic events are frequently linked to powerful supervolcanic eruptions. These have the power to kill wildlife and have an impact on the climate. They may, for instance, trigger a little ice age. Since a large explosion covered the hot point on the Yellowstone Plateau, there hasn't been any volcanic activity in Yellowstone before. 3 massive volcanoes that erupted millions of years ago created Island Park Crater, Henry Fort Crater, and Yellowstone Crater. The 1980 eruption of Mount St. Helens destroyed the Huckleberry Ridge Tuff, which had been created 2.1 million years earlier as a consequence of the super eruption of Island Park Crater, the biggest ash from a volcano. The Little Miss of Falls Tuff is the only caldera in the Snake River Plains Yellowstone hotspot that is still visibly visible today. It developed from Henry's Fork Crater 1.2 million years ago. As previously stated, in the event of another big eruption, the supervolcano under Yellowstone National Park would shoot ash thousands of miles across the country, destroying houses, farmland, restrooms, and power facilities. Even though this will be a major catastrophe, nobody needs to become alarmed. Thankfully, this is not likely to occur. However, it's easy to understand why the Yellowstone supervolcano is still regarded as a strange sunset feature. A group of scientists examined the possible visual signature of Yellowstone supereruptions and published their findings in the September 2014 issue of Geochemistry, Geophysics, Earth Systems. They discovered, among other things, that the volcano could bury areas like Wyoming, Montana, Idaho, and Colorado, and cover the Midwest with 3 megatons of hazardous ash. These massive ash clouds have the potential to destroy countless electrical gadgets, injure flora and fauna, and collapse roofs. After all, a 5-mile-deep puddle of molten lava created by huge lava erupting hundreds of miles below lies under Yellowstone National Park. Heat is the primary source of many of the park's well-known geysers and hot springs. Despite the fact that occasionally the earth above rises and lowers as magma cools and climbs into the chamber, the magma chamber has really detonated several times. The Pitchstone Plateau last experienced an eruption almost 70,000 years ago, and the majority of Yellowstone's eruptions are characterized by little lava flows. However, there is extremely little chance of a catastrophic event occurring, which is why Yellowstone has garnered so much interest. A supereruption is defined as an eruption that ejects at least 240 cubic miles of material and has a volcanic eruption index of 8 or above. In other words, Texas would receive $5 trillion in land. Supervolcanic eruptions are thousands of times more powerful than even the biggest volcanic eruptions that we are accustomed to. Evidence of at least 47 supervolcanic eruptions over Earth's history has been discovered by geologists. Indeed, there are other supervolcanoes in the globe than Yellowstone. Actually, the last one took place at Lake Taupo, New Zealand, some 26,000 years ago. Furthermore, the 74,000-year-old Toba volcanic eruption was brought on by plate movement. Experts claim that this resulted in a 6 to 10-year worldwide catastrophe that may have ended human history. There isn't a hard rule, but on Earth, a significant event normally happens once every 100,000 years. So, could you let me know whether it occurs now? Large mega explosions will undoubtedly have more obvious consequences. Prior to the eruption, there will be a great deal of seismic activity across the park. The rock above the magma may fracture over the course of weeks or months during these earthquakes. What would happen if there was a super eruption that had 1,000 times the strength of a typical volcanic eruption? It might take weeks or months for it to absorb ash and debris. At some point, that's it. Approximately 40 km will see the park's lava flows automatically close. Actually, hardly 1/3 of them manage to reach space. A combination of glass and pebbles, volcanic ash is hurled into the air for kilometers and spreads throughout the nation, resulting in several calamities. Scientists came to the conclusion in this new study that volcanic eruptions create umbrella clouds that disperse uniformly in all directions. Based on previous ash studies and modeling, the catastrophic catastrophe that is expected to affect Wyoming, Idaho, Colorado, Montana, and Utah would cover the northern Rocky Mountains with 10 feet of ash. In the meanwhile, the Midwest and coastlines will see several inches of ash build, with varying degrees of severity depending on the weather and season. It's unfortunate to say, but one of these scenarios exists. Large amounts of ash have the power to demolish structures and injure humans, pets, and plants. The majority of nations can experience even a few inches of ash, which can devastate crops, clog water lines, block highways, create major respiratory issues, and even damage transformers. It is not supposed for much of North America to fly aeroplanes. The major concern is, what if Yellowstone starts to shake tomorrow? While scientists don't fully understand the process, they do have a general understanding. A lot of people forecast calamity. Remember that this volcano's risk of a quick eruption has increased by 320% to its greatest level in the last 10 years. This does not bode well. In addition, Yellowstone records 1 to 3,000 earthquakes a year. Since most earthquakes have a magnitude of 3 or less, they are unexpected. However, these tremors could provide light on how rapidly the magma chamber under the park is growing. Even worse, there has been a recent rise in the park's shaking and clicking, which is a sign that magma is seeping into the reservoir. The Yellowstone supervolcano falls in on itself with each eruption, obliterating all of the nearby mountains, forests, and other features. The ensuing fire in Yellowstone would be catastrophic if this occurred right now. Some of the ruins of the most recent eruption may be seen in the Lava Creek Tuff area of the 50 kilometers by 70 kilometers Yellowstone caldera. Even now, one can observe the dense volcanic material that the eruption left behind. Scientists are monitoring every cough and sneeze to attempt to forecast what will happen next, while Yellowstone is dozing off. The powers that have built up beneath Yellowstone for thousands of years have been extinguished, but this does not mean that the park will never erupt again. When and how severe it will be are things we need to know. When will it be too late? Please share your thoughts in the comments section below on the 320% increase in the likelihood of a rapid eruption at Yellowstone. Press the subscribe button to begin your journey with us if you're ready for more thrilling stuff.